You wake up in the morning before breakfast and something feels very wrong. A cold sweat is breaking out across your skin even though you are not warm. Your hands are trembling slightly but noticeably. Your heart is beating faster than normal. A deep, almost frantic hunger is rising in your chest. You feel dizzy, slightly confused, and strangely anxious. Even though nothing alarming has happened. Most people in this situation reach for the nearest sweet food, feel better within minutes, and move on with their day without a second thought. But after watching this video, you will understand why that response, while correct in the moment, is only the beginning of what you need to do. Cold sweats and hand trembling on an empty stomach are not just signs of ordinary hunger. They are among the most recognizable warning signals of hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar. And while that distinction may sound technical, the difference between treating it correctly in the moment and ignoring the bigger picture could be the difference between a manageable health condition and a life-threatening emergency. Before anything else, here is what you must do right now. If you are currently experiencing these symptoms, sit or lie down immediately so that if you become faint, you will not fall and injure yourself. Consume 15 to 20 grams of fast-acting carbohydrates right away. A small glass of fruit juice, 3 or 4 glucose tablets. A tablespoon of honey dissolved in water, or a handful of regular hard candies will all work. Wait 15 minutes. If your symptoms have not improved, consume another 15 grams of fast-acting carbohydrates. If after a second round your symptoms still have not resolved, or if you feel unable to swallow safely, call emergency services immediately. This is the 15 rule, and it is the foundational protocol for managing a hypoglycemic episode. Now let us understand what is actually happening in your body. Blood glucose, the concentration of sugar in your bloodstream, is the primary fuel for every cell in your body, and by far the most critical fuel for your brain. When you eat, carbohydrates are broken down into glucose and absorbed into the blood. This triggers the release of insulin from the pancreas, which helps cells take up glucose for energy, while storing excess glucose as glycogen in the liver and muscles. As hours pass without eating, blood glucose gradually falls. In a healthy person, the pancreas releases glucagon, which signals the liver to convert stored glycogen back into glucose, keeping blood sugar within a safe range. Hypoglycemia occurs when this regulation fails, and blood glucose falls below approximately 70 milligrams per deciliter. When this happens, the body launches an emergency hormonal response. Adrenaline, also called epinephrine, floods the bloodstream. This hormone is trying to rapidly release glucose from the liver to correct the problem, but it simultaneously triggers a cascade of physical symptoms. Cold sweats are caused by adrenaline-activating sweat glands. Trembling hands result from adrenaline-stimulating muscle tissue. Heart palpitations come from adrenaline increasing heart rate. Anxiety and restlessness are direct neurological effects of adrenaline. Intense hunger is the body's urgent signal to find food. These adrenaline-driven symptoms are your early warning system. They are uncomfortable, even frightening, but they are protective. They appear while your brain still has enough glucose to function, and while you still have the capacity to act. If you respond correctly at this stage, you can resolve the episode without harm. But if these symptoms are ignored or mistaken for anxiety or ordinary tiredness, blood glucose can continue falling until the brain itself begins to malfunction. At that point, symptoms shift from uncomfortable to dangerous. Confusion, slurred speech, difficulty concentrating, blurred vision, and severe headache appear. These are signs that the brain is running critically low on fuel. Without intervention, seizures and loss of consciousness follow. And if severe hypoglycemia is left untreated long enough, permanent brain damage or death can occur. The most important first principle for anyone experiencing cold sweats and trembling on an empty stomach is this: do not wait to see if it passes on its own. Do not keep working or driving until you feel better. Act immediately with fast-acting glucose, and keep acting until the symptoms genuinely resolve. Now let us look at why hypoglycemia happens. Because the cause determines how to prevent it in the future. The most common cause worldwide is diabetes treatment. People with type 1 diabetes who use insulin must carefully balance their insulin doses with their food intake and activity level. Too much insulin relative to carbohydrate intake causes blood sugar to fall. People with type 2 diabetes who use sulfonylurea medications, a class of drug that stimulates the pancreas to produce more insulin, regardless of blood glucose, are also at significant risk, particularly if they skip meals or exercise more than usual. The second major cause is prolonged fasting or skipping meals. If you regularly go more than 5 or 6 hours without eating, your liver's glycogen stores can become depleted. Without adequate glycogen reserves, the body cannot maintain blood glucose during fasting, and hypoglycemia can result. This is especially relevant for people who practice intermittent fasting, very low-calorie diets, or who routinely skip breakfast. The third cause is alcohol, particularly alcohol consumed without food. Alcohol suppresses the liver's ability to produce glucose from glycogen. When you drink on an empty stomach, the liver is already running low on stored glycogen, and alcohol further blocks the emergency glucose production pathway. The result can be profound hypoglycemia that develops hours after drinking, including the following morning, which is why cold sweats and trembling after a night of heavy drinking are not simply a hangover. They may be hypoglycemia. The fourth cause is reactive hypoglycemia, also called postprandial hypoglycemia. This occurs in people without diabetes, typically 2 to 4 hours after a meal. A large, high-carbohydrate, low-fiber meal, particularly one built around refined carbohydrates like white rice, white bread, sugary snacks, or sweetened drinks, causes a rapid, dramatic rise in blood glucose. The pancreas responds with a surge of insulin, but the insulin surge is excessive relative to the actual glucose load, and blood sugar overshoots on the way down, producing hypoglycemia. People who experience mid-morning shakiness and sweating after a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast are experiencing this pattern. Reactive hypoglycemia in a person without diabetes is sometimes an early indicator of insulin resistance or prediabetes, making it important not to dismiss. The fifth cause, and the one most people never consider, is an insulinoma, a small tumor of the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas that secretes insulin autonomously, without regard to blood glucose levels. Insulinomas are rare but serious. The hallmark is fasting hypoglycemia, low blood sugar that occurs specifically when the stomach is empty, worsening with prolonged fasting or exercise, and resolving when food is eaten. If you or someone you know experiences recurring fasting hypoglycemia without an obvious explanation, like medication or extreme dieting, an insulinoma must be ruled out through medical testing. Other causes of unexplained hypoglycemia include adrenal insufficiency, severe liver disease, and certain medications, including quinine and high-dose aspirin. The immediate takeaway from this section is crucial. A single episode of cold sweats and hand trembling during a long fast, followed by complete resolution after eating, is likely benign and attributable to simple low blood sugar from prolonged fasting. But recurring episodes, especially fasting hypoglycemia, that is severe or frequent, or hypoglycemia that does not quickly resolve with eating, demand medical investigation. Do not accept these episodes as normal. They are not normal, and finding the cause can prevent a medical emergency. Now that you understand what hypoglycemia is and why it happens, let us focus on what to do about it in both the short term and the long term. This section covers the specific foods and strategies that stabilize blood sugar, the lifestyle adjustments that prevent hypoglycemic episodes, and the practical 7-day plan. You can begin tomorrow. The foundation of blood sugar stability is understanding why blood sugar becomes unstable in the first place, the primary driver of reactive hypoglycemia. In many cases of fasting hypoglycemia is the glycemic roller coaster, the cycle of rapid blood sugar spikes, followed by excessive insulin responses that push blood sugar too low. Breaking this cycle requires targeting the causes of the spike, not just the consequences. The most impactful dietary change you can make is replacing refined carbohydrates with complex carbohydrates. White rice, white bread, instant cereals, crackers, sugary snacks, and sweetened beverages all cause sharp, rapid rises in blood glucose because they are digested almost immediately. Complex carbohydrates, oats, brown Rice, legumes, most vegetables, and whole grain products are broken down much more slowly, producing a gentle, sustained rise in blood glucose rather than a spike. This slower glucose release means a calmer, more measured insulin response, and far less risk of blood sugar crashing 2 to 3 hours later. Protein is equally critical. Protein does not raise blood glucose directly. Instead, it slows gastric emptying, meaning food moves from the stomach to the small intestine more slowly, which delays and blunts the absorption of carbohydrates eaten in the same meal. Protein also stimulates the release of glucagon from the pancreas, which helps maintain blood glucose between meals, including a protein source at every meal: eggs, fish, chicken, tofu, legumes. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese dramatically stabilizes blood sugar compared to carbohydrate-only meals. Dietary fat plays a similar role to protein. Fat slows gastric emptying and reduces the glycemic impact of carbohydrates consumed at the same time. Healthy fats: olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, and the omega-3 fats found in fatty fish also provide sustained energy without raising blood glucose at all. Adding a small amount of healthy fat to a carbohydrate-containing meal is one of the simplest ways to prevent post-meal blood sugar spikes. Fiber is the fourth pillar of blood sugar stabilization. Soluble fiber, the type found in oats, legumes, apples, and barley, forms a gel-like substance in the digestive tract that physically slows the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. Research consistently shows that high-fiber meals produce significantly lower post-meal glucose and insulin responses compared to low-fiber meals with the same carbohydrate content. Aim for vegetables at every meal, and choose whole food carbohydrates over processed ones. The order in which you eat within a meal also matters more than most people realize. Multiple clinical studies have demonstrated that eating vegetables first, then protein and fat, then carbohydrates last reduces post-meal blood sugar by up to 30 to 40%, compared to eating in the typical Western sequence of bread. First are carbohydrates alongside everything else. The fiber from vegetables consumed at the start of the meal creates a kind of physical barrier that slows the absorption of glucose from the carbohydrates that follow. This single habit change, costing nothing and requiring no special foods, can make a substantial difference in blood sugar stability over time. Meal frequency is another important lever. Allowing very long gaps between meals, particularly skipping breakfast or lunch entirely, depletes liver glycogen and creates conditions where blood sugar can fall to hypoglycemic levels before the next meal. For people prone to hypoglycemia, eating at regular intervals, including strategically timed snacks, prevents blood sugar from falling too far between meals. The best snacks for blood sugar stability are those that combine protein, fat, and fiber rather than carbohydrates alone. A handful of almonds, a hard-boiled egg, plain Greek yogurt, cheese with a few whole grain crackers, or a small portion of hummus with vegetable slices are all excellent choices that stabilize blood sugar without causing a glucose spike. Specific foods deserve attention for their blood sugar stabilizing properties. Oats are among the most studied. The beta-glucan fiber in oats has been shown in numerous trials to significantly reduce post-meal blood glucose and insulin responses, improve insulin sensitivity, and reduce fasting blood glucose over time. A bowl of steel-cut or rolled oats in the morning provides sustained energy release that can protect against mid-morning hypoglycemic episodes. Cinnamon contains compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and have been shown in some studies to modestly reduce fasting blood glucose. A half teaspoon added to morning oatmeal, coffee, or yogurt is sufficient to produce a measurable effect. Apple cider vinegar, taken as 1 to 2 tablespoons, diluted in water 15 minutes before a meal, reduces post-meal glucose rises by slowing gastric emptying and inhibiting certain carbohydrate digesting enzymes. Almonds and walnuts provide protein, healthy fat, and magnesium, a mineral involved in insulin signaling that many people are subtly deficient in. Exercise is one of the most powerful blood sugar stabilizing tools available. During physical activity, working muscles take up glucose directly from the blood without requiring insulin. This lowers blood glucose effectively and, with regular exercise, makes cells more insulin sensitive so that insulin works better at lower doses. However, the relationship between exercise and hypoglycemia is not straightforward. For people who are prone to hypoglycemia, exercising on an empty stomach when blood sugar is already low can drive blood glucose dangerously further down. Check blood sugar before exercise whenever possible. If your pre-exercise reading is below 100 mg per deciliter, consume a small carbohydrate snack first. After intense or prolonged exercise, blood sugar can continue falling for up to 24 hours as muscles replenish their glycogen stores, a phenomenon called delayed hypoglycemia. A post-exercise snack containing both carbohydrates and protein, such as a banana, with milk or whole grain toast with an egg helps prevent this. The single most effective time to exercise for blood sugar control is 30 to 90 minutes after a meal, when blood glucose is at its highest. A 15 to 20-minute walk after dinner produces a measurable reduction in post-meal blood glucose and prevents the glucose spike from triggering an excessive insulin response. This simple practice has been shown in research to be comparable in blood sugar-lowering effect to some medications. Sleep deprivation profoundly disrupts blood sugar regulation. After just 2 consecutive nights of 5 hours of sleep or less, insulin resistance increases measurably and the hormonal systems that regulate blood glucose begin to malfunction. Cortisol and growth hormone, both of which raise blood glucose, are elevated by poor sleep, while the body's ability to produce and respond to insulin is impaired. 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep is not optional for anyone trying to manage blood sugar stability. It is a core intervention. Chronic stress has an equally significant impact. Stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, mobilize glucose from the liver and create insulin resistance. People under sustained psychological stress often experience erratic blood sugar fluctuations that make hypoglycemic episodes more likely. Stress management through regular physical activity, deep breathing exercises, adequate sleep, and social connection is a legitimate and important component of blood sugar management. Here is your 7-day blood sugar stabilization plan. On day 1, equip yourself. Purchase a blood glucose meter if you do not have one. Buy a supply of fast-acting glucose tablets, juice boxes, or hard candies and place them in your bag, beside your bed, and in your car. Measure your blood sugar upon waking before breakfast and note the result. On day 2, change your breakfast. Replace a refined carbohydrate breakfast with oats, a protein source such as eggs or Greek yogurt, and a handful of nuts. Note how long you remain satisfied, and whether you experience any mid-morning energy crash. On day 3, change your meal sequence at lunch. Eat your vegetables first, then your protein, then your carbohydrates. Measure blood sugar 2 hours after lunch and compare to day 1. On day 4, add a strategic mid-morning snack, such as a small handful of almonds and a glass of water. Notice whether this prevents the late morning shakiness you may normally experience. On day 5, take a 15-minute walk after dinner and measure blood sugar before and after. On day 6, prioritize sleep, targeting 7 to 8 hours. Note your fasting blood sugar the following morning. On day 7, review all your readings and identify the patterns. Which meals caused the largest blood sugar swings? Which habits made the most difference? Use this information to build your ongoing plan. The most important message in this entire video is this: cold sweats and hand trembling on an empty stomach are a signal. They are your body communicating in the clearest possible physiological language that something needs immediate attention. Respond to that signal in the moment with fast-acting glucose. Then, if this signal appears repeatedly, take it to a physician. Because whether it is early diabetes, reactive hypoglycemia, a pancreatic tumor, or an adrenal problem, each of these conditions is far better treated early than after a serious episode. The body does not send emergency signals for no reason. If today's information helped you, or gave you something important to bring to someone you love, please share this video. Leave a comment telling us what part resonated most, or what question you still have. Subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss health information that could matter this much. Your blood sugar is the pulse of your energy, your clarity, and your safety. Protect it, and it will protect you.